And now here's part 2 of our episode.
Listening to it that time, I got a very clear picture of, like, I mean, maybe because you mentioned the boat beforehand, but I was just imagining, like, being on the water, like, at sunset. Like, you know how like, the last few minutes or so of the sun setting, like, you can sort of, like, count it out because, like, as it gets closer to the horizon, you can sort of, like, see it actually moving down. Mm-hmm. And that's the exact sort of picture that I got. What makes this a standout track for you, Sarah?
Oh my God. Honestly, every time I listen to it, I like can't even love it enough. There's so much beauty in that song. And the way it's just like not even that organized. It's just like the end, it just like trails and trails. And I just feel like it like draws you in so much. I can listen to it 1,000 times and just still love it.
I also like the thing you said earlier about how you felt like this was all of the things that would become trademark. This album contains all of the things that would become trademark Van Morrison, because I do think this song is almost like an unspooled version of his one of his tighter pop songs.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got like this whole album. Like Into the Mystic is maybe like one, maybe my favorite song. It's like one of the greatest, or like Typical Honey. But the things that I love about it is like that, just like ethereal kind of like sway. And this is like Into the Mystic vibes, but it's just less produced. It's like less of a like, here's part A, here's part B, here's the bridge, here's the chorus. It's just like the raw, it's just so raw. Yeah, stream of consciousness. I mean, it's been said before, but it's like, feels like you're just there with him.
And especially since it sounds like he was playing in a lot of really structured, this Irish show band. I did some reading about the tradition of that, and there's all sorts of very structured musical traditions in the Isles, as they say. To see somebody that's like really, really letting loose and having already has that all that structure and all that discipline in them, but has kind of like is taking their tools and letting them run wild is refreshing. I was wondering if you have seen The Last Waltz.
No, I have not seen the movie.
Okay,
great. The concert film, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I have not seen it.
For those of you out there who don't know, Martin Scorsese's concert film of the band's the band featuring Robbie Robertson, the late Robbie Robertson, and the late Levon Helm. Rest in peace to both of them. And Van Morrison makes a very striking appearance.
Cool.
Comes along on 2 songs. One of them being his own Caravan, which is another excellent song. But he's so, Sarah, you got to watch it, because if you want to talk about loose, if you want to talk about loose, Van is loose on this. You're just like, homeboy was having a great time. So all of the stuff that's in this song, it's very at play in The Last Waltz.
Awesome.
This is, I mean, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. I'm just sort of thinking, thinking of the title of the album. I sort of like re-looked up definitions of things like astral projection and the astral plane, and that sort of I started to go down that a little bit, but then I was also like this. I don't know. It got into like esotericism, and I'm like, like I can't. Yeah. It's like above my mental pay grade. And I was wondering, is this an album that you also make some sort of spiritual connection to?
I mean, if I like really considered myself a very spiritual person, I think it could go there. But it's like, for me, it's just like the feeling. It's not about. I mean, it's like connecting with the music, and you could feel like it connects you with like nature. There's just these like the rain, and as I said, it's like he always comes back to that of the trees and the rain, and like, wouldn't I love to like walk in gardens all misty wet with rain with Van Morrison? Like, that's just what you want to do with this. It's like not necessarily spiritual, but it like hits so deep in my soul that it's like it really is like transformative, transcendent, I guess.
Oh, both. I mean,
Yeah, it's totally both.
Yeah, because it does such, like, I mean, the sort of visuals it was creating as I listened to it, even thinking about like tracks towards the middle, like there are these sort of recurring characters and recurring locations throughout the album. Like there's the character of Madame George, the location of Cypress Avenue, where you can't help but sort of develop a mental picture of who the person is. And I feel like I read a couple interviews, and he's kind of sketchy about answering direct questions about what the album's about, because he's even said it just sort of flowed out of him. Like, there are theories about who Madame George is, and he's like, whatever. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, whatever you think it is.
Assign your meaning.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you ever seen Van Morrison live?
Yes.
I did see Van once. I forget the venue. It was called the Guinness Fla, so it was like a festival put on by Guinness. And Natalie McMaster, great like fiddle, Irish fiddler, and Van Morrison. It was great. I was probably 18, and I went with my whole family and our like best friends, our family friends, and we had a great time. And I think he was maybe more into some like other stuff. I don't know if it was like Hymns to the Silence era, or like it wasn't. He didn't play all the jams that I wanted, that I remember.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But his like, because his library is just so vast, and he really does kind of like throw through different eras of music. And so I think, I did see him. It didn't change my life, but I would totally go.
We sort of talked about this on our David Bowie episode, the fact that when you're an artist who has a catalog that large, and if you see them at a certain point in their career where they're playing, they're in a different phase, and you're like, I just want to hear Suffragette City, and David Bowie's like, no, I'm going to play this album instead. Sounds like that was a similar experience.
I think that's where we were at. Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it's not that we didn't hear any songs we loved, but it was definitely like more cued to what he was working on then. I don't think anything hits home like the second album, which is like just pure band.
Yeah,
to me.
This distilled, purely distilled, distilled band. Do you have other artists that you do follow through on a kind of career scope level? I just wonder who else is in your heart bands.
Oh yeah, I mean, I do follow Dylan, and I've listened to like everything he puts out. I'll take a listen to some of it, and I've been following Lake Street Dive since I first heard them on Prairie Home Companion, and listening to everything and loving everything. Yeah,
Lake Street Dive. People, if we haven't talked about that on the air, that's a band I really believe in. They're really quite good.
Oh, Paul Simon. Oh my God, Paul Simon is my heart, and everything he puts out, I listen to, I love. I find some love for it, and still there's like some stuff that's probably mostly older that is just never gonna be topped in my opinion.
That's the way of things, isn't it? I don't think we've had a Simon and Garfunkel nomination yet, have we, Michael?
I mean, it was on my list.
Yeah, Paul Simon was on your list, yeah. And we part of the reason, again, sort of peeling back the curtain a little bit here, is when an album in a particular season, if multiple people bring it up in the same season, we'd make sure we cover it. And you weren't the only person who brought up Van Morrison this season. So.
Well, this season, actually, as I sit, I could see out my window right now, and it's like this misty fall, leaves are half down, and it's like cool and cold. And this album is like being wrapped up in like a cozy sweater or blanket. It's like, it's so comforting, and it really has these fall vibes where you just like feel like it brings you the warmth that you are desperately needing in this time of year.
Oh yeah, people are gonna be glad to get this one this week. Then,
yeah.
Feels like a great transition, actually. So we did ask you to give us a list of some albums you thought were perfect, but we did not define the word perfect for you. So what made you put this album on the list? Do you have specific standards for perfection when listening to albums?
Yeah, well, I do. And I think that I listened to a few of your previous podcasts. I'm not quite caught up, but I do get the kind of the question around it.
Yeah, we've got a lot of episodes now.
Yeah. So I think for me, a perfect album, it has to take you on this journey. Like the songs, it's a piece of art. And so I think the art of the album, it may be, on the way out, or people aren't listening to it much, but listening to albums quite as much, or maybe they're getting back to it now. But for me, it's like every song transitions into the next, and it's the type of thing where you kind of what's coming next, and you can't wait for it to happen. So it just brings you on this full journey, and for me, no skips. I don't think you can have a perfect album where there's a skip. Maybe sure if you're not in the mood one day or something, but in general, I feel like it, like you couldn't look at a painting and just like ignore one little part of it or something. Like it's there, it's part of it. It was created as one piece. So for me, it's no skips, and this has it. There's no skips. There's songs that maybe aren't as amazing as the other songs, but they're all amazing.
Well, when you have that flow from song to song, it's hard to skip. Like I think this is one of those albums that ends up kind of being one large thing, as opposed to demarcating between things.
I mean, and Moondance, which is Van's third album, which came out right after this, it's an awesome album. As I said, I probably listened to it like 1,000 times, and I could sing along the whole thing. But it really doesn't have the same flow. Like there's great pop songs. I mean, there's a lot more pop songs, but it also it's not a journey. It's not like you're in the North Atlantic on a boat with Van. It's not like that.
Not a vibe. Not a vibe like this
it's
one.
It's not a vibe.
Individually, like each song on a song by song basis is a vibe, I would say. But you don't have as much of that unifying thing. I would agree with that point, and you get 80,000 points for that.
And I think it's good for an album to have some recurrent themes, and like this one does. It comes back to those characters, even though they're like you don't really know anything about them, but there's like a boy with the shoes, and there's the cypress trees, and there's like the rain, of course.
Yeah,
always the rain.
A lot of rain. Yeah. Even though there's not like a clear narrative, I feel like if I had put this album on shuffle, it wouldn't have had the same impact. Like it does feel like it's sequenced in the right way. I don't know what that sequence is, but I'm going again, vibes here. Like it feels like that's the right sequence.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, when I listen to it, it like builds up, and the song, The Way Young Lovers Do, which is the fifth song, it's like everything kind of like picks up, and it gets a little raucous, and it's like a little more maybe jazz influence, or like there's some more going on in there. Mm-hmm. And for me to like continue this boat analogy, but like that's like the part of the trip where you're like the winds are shifting, and you're kind of rocking, and like things get a little tumultuous, and you're like, oh, okay. But then like right into Madame George after that, and it just brings you right back down. And then the whole rest of the album is just like settling. And then another thing that I really love about this album is like the last song, Slow Slim Slider. It's just kind of like so different. It's like a couple just like pitter patter. You have to go and listen to it, dear listeners.
And you could listen to the 2015 long version as well.
Oh, you could do that. I didn't do that, but it also feels like it just wraps it up. It's like, okay, now you're stepping off the boat now, and it's clear. Like this is over, and you can start the album again, which I do. But it's like it's not sharp, but it's definitive. It's like, okay,
dynamics. Yeah,
it's abrupt. It's abrupt though, because you're sort of like, wait, is the song? I don't know if the song's done. Okay, but I guess it's done. Like,
happened to me twice last night. I was like, did my thing? I was baking while I had this on, and the baking turned out really good, by the way. And and it stopped, and I was like, what the hell happened? And then I remembered. I thought my phone got disconnected from the Bluetooth. I was like, something's up. But it was just Van. It was just Van.
It's interesting. It's an interesting choice, but I kind of endearing, I think.
Yeah, it's mischievous because there's a little bit of mischief about this guy, and not to make a generalization about the Irish people, but like there's a fun loving aspect of it that I think is that play. They're playing. That looseness is almost childlike, and it's kind of like throwing stuff at the wall. And he captures a lot of that on this.
It's just totally raw.
The Irish, they are a fun-loving people who keep their secrets buried deep inside. Speaking as 150% myself, anyway.
Bless you. Bless you.
But Tyler, though, what did you bake? I feel like our listeners want to know. What did you bake yesterday?
I made baked goods for my pickleball friends. One of them is vegan, so I made a vegan gluten-free banana bread, which turned out okay. I'm It's not my best work, but I think almond flowers are difficult. They're finicky.
Yeah.
And then I made a pumpkin maple muffin for the non-vegan
Ooh, that
people.
sounds
And
good.
that one turned out tender.
We do love our maple up here in the North Country.
Yeah.
Everything is maple up here.
There's the pastoral thing, right? The pastoral thing about, you mentioned Dylan, you mentioned, the kind of the landscape of what you imagine with Van, but I think like he would probably feel a great connection to the North Country culture as well. We talked to one of Gabriel Dorfman Hopkins a few weeks ago about the Mars Volta, and he was talking, they were talking about, picking on porches and the kind of musical culture that is in the North Country. I think there's a lot of the spirit in this album. It fits really, really well with the how I feel like music is played, how I'm understanding music is played up there, if there's a tradition like that.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. It's really, it's not showy, and it's just kind of for each other.
Yeah. Like, what do you think about the work that he's bringing out now? Like, have you listened to the recent albums? Like, how do they strike you? Where do you feel like he's gone as an artist at this point?
I mean, honestly, he's 78, and I think he's made just about an album a year for the last decade.
Pretty
so
much,
it's still, it's really impressive. Nothing has like made it to my heavy rotation so far. And it's hard. It's actually hard to listen to all the music that there is. Like, it's hard to listen to all the great music. As you guys know, there's so much. I could probably spend weeks just listening to Van Morrison, but I haven't. So nothing has hit home. But I still think he's doing good work, and a lot of it's pretty catchy, and he's definitely moved towards like more of a pop vibe. But it still does. It's very pleasing to me.
He still got it. Yeah,
still got it.
At 78 years old, man, if I'm still jamming at 78, I'm gonna feel pretty good. And I feel like he's lived a hard life. He's lived hard and fast. It seems like he's a little party guy. I'm glad he's still kicking, I guess is what I'm saying. We can't all live as clean as Paul McCartney. And that dude will have a bass in his hands at the moment he passes.
Yeah, probably.
I wanted to ask a nerdy question about your work and how music's your job. That's like it's a wild thing for me to wrap my head around, as somebody who also, you get those little dreams of like, oh, what would I have on my radio show if I hosted a radio show? So like, how has your consumption of music changed since taking on this work? Do you find that you listen with a different ear, or that you're looking for different things in music? What's that like?
I definitely listen with a different ear, I think. And I listen more intently. And I also listen more, like, certainly as I've taken on this, and it has become part of my work. It's super fun work, but to listen to like new releases, that come out all the time, it does take time. So I think it's been positive for me, because I've probably stopped listening to the news as much and spend more of my, like, when I'm just listening for myself, it's more listening to music these days. And I also, it's still like, I had a friend recently say like, oh, I have this great new artist, but I didn't send it to you because you probably like already know. I'm like, no, how could I possibly know all the great new artists that you have to share? I'm just one person, and there's just so much great music.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing to be consumed by. Good music.
Hence the reason why Michael and I do this dang thing,
Exactly.
It's great to listen with an intentional ear. And one of the, I'll love public radio till the day I die. And we're really blessed in LA with two really great NPR stations, and KCRW. They echo something. They just recently echoed something you just said about their submissions, that they listen to every submission. Like, they listen to every single thing. Somebody in the station listens to every piece of music that is shared with them for consideration, which I think is like, it's a beautiful thing that there is an outlet that we still have in this world, that you can share music that you made, and there's the chance that it'll get broadcast to a whole bunch of people in your region, and there's just a system in place for that to exist. What a miracle as a human race that we came up with that, right?
Yeah, it is. There's so much. I mean, we get a lot of submissions too, and we do listen to everything too, and some stuff will go on, but there's like no way that, you know, your AI or your Spotify could like curate and actually find like the variety that every person is probably desiring for their ears. I feel like if you say, okay, I like Van Morrison, so they're going to play you Van Morrison and Bob Dylan, and like they'll play this, but they won't bring in this, like, you know, the new artists that are actually doing such cool things that are similar but brand new.
Part of that's just like, you know, I also work in software, and part of that I imagine is just kind of like the data aspect of it, right? You know, like there's all this data out there about the old timers, right? About the Van Morrisons and the Bob Dylans and the band and all of them. But like, if you don't have any frame of context for these things, you have to do something to break the seal on these artists and these people that want to share when they have nothing. You know, they have no other like digital presence out there in the world for an algorithm to consume. So I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about this AI thing. I know it's an existential threat, but I think like there'll always be a place. If you're not as optimistic.
Well, I mean,
this is the thing, though, Michael. I'm the optimistic one.
This is true. I mean, well, but aside from the fact that I think that AI is going to destroy us all, I think that the other thing is that I find that in terms of recommending music to me, like my Spotify Discover Weekly list is not great. I mean, I think that I would say like once every 3 to 4 months, there will be one track on my Discover Weekly playlist, and I'm like, oh, I dig that. And maybe that's partially because of the fact that I use my Spotify for so many different things. I'm sorry, Tower, did a bunch of balloons just go up behind you?
A bunch of balloons just okay, all right, that is scary. I feel like there is some sort of AI that is listening to us. And
oh my God.
Listeners, what just happened on Zoom? What just happened on Zoom? This is staying in the episode, by the way. A bunch of balloons just came across my camera, and I have no idea why.
See, AI is doing destroy us all. With balloons first. You know?
that was weird. Okay.
In any case, I just think also since we've been doing this podcast too, I feel like Spotify doesn't know what to do with us because, you know, like 1 week we're listening to the soundtrack, The Gospel of Colonus, and then the next we're listening to Mars Volta, and then Janet Jackson, and then Van Morrison. I'm sure Spotify is like, what the hell is happening here? So that might be part of it.
It's a little limiting in some ways, I will say, even the mechanism of it. And Sarah, I don't know if this would be something you'd be conscious of either, but like I've had people say, we had a party, and I had people say, oh, let me connect my Spotify. Let me connect my Spotify to play this for you so that it doesn't mess up your algorithm. And I'm like, what? Just play it on my thing. If it's being played near me, then it should contribute to my algorithmic, you know, soup.
Oh yeah. Well, you might think differently if you had a 14-year-old that loved like not only Taylor Swift but all the other like Ice Spice and YouTube pop stars.
Oh really?
So for a while he took over until we got him his own account. He took over mine, and it was my top 10 were like all under 20 years old.
Did you have a lot of 100 gecs?
No, I haven't. No, it was really young, like kid stuff, really kid stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, they're listening to. This is your younger kid? 2 boys. Yeah, the younger one is really into YouTube, and so would he be considered Gen Alpha? Is that the classification?
I don't know. That sounds. I don't know yet.
My neighbor's Gen Alpha, and he like speaking to him is like speaking to an alien sometimes. I feel it's like really I do my best, and I try to like remain open-minded, and he also has the cutest speech impediment. So it's like everything's great about it, but he says a bunch of words I have no idea what they mean. It's great.
All right, Tyler, we should probably hit the board, I think.
Oh goodness. Yes, I think we should hit the board. All right, Sarah, this is a competition. I say this on a lot of episodes. It's all about winning, and so you came to win, and you were serious about it, and we appreciate that. also, the conversation kept going. Like, we didn't get a ton of points on the board, but I think the points that you had were very impactful. The one that I gave you most recently was 80,000 points for kind of like the overall vibe of the thing. You know, like you get the journey of this. We use the word vibe a lot in this episode, but the journey that the album takes you on, that boat ride, if you will, that to continue that metaphor we've been using, I think it's a really strong point in the case for this album's perfection. 500,000 points for that Irish honeymoon. Respect.
Ooh,
I
nice.
like that. We don't all need to go somewhere tropical. Sometimes we need to go someplace dreary, right? So we know how much we love that person. 25,000 points to Michael and you for the Ulysses Astral Weeks comparison. I think that's a very apt connection. 50,000 points for Oh My God, What Is This? That is a beautiful moment for your son to have, and one that I relish every time I get it. 5,000 points also from Michael for the Brittany Howard, Janis Joplin analogy.
Yeah, that was
I
good.
really like that. She's so good. She's so
I'm
good.
going to keep working on these analogies of my old favorites with my new favorites.
Yeah, we need to. We should do a follow up. We should do a follow up.
Yeah, send us a list. We could share it on social media.
I would love that.
Okay.
6,000 points for Invoking Prairie Home Companion, a very formative musical influence on me as well. Growing up, I have huge, big high fives. Just the quiet of it and the storytelling, and obviously Garrison Keillor's voice, and just everything about that is very nostalgic, very warm, very homey. I'm glad that it existed. 900 points for your Carvel ice cream money going towards your concert habit growing up. We just whatever it takes to get there, right?
Hashtag Fudgy
the Whale. Free Fudgy the Whale. And then you gave me 5 awesome mellow boat rides for my emphatic 60-second intro to Van Morrison and this album. It's a strong board. It's a strong album. You came to it. You're right in the pocket with this one. So that means we just have to leave it to my friend Michael. Michael, you heard the case that Sarah made. You see the points on the board. Mm-hmm. Tell me, is Astral Weeks by Van Morrison a perfect album? Does it go to 11?
I think you've made me a convert. I wasn't sure what I thought about this album, but this conversation has really turned me on to it. So yes, goes to 11. Perfect album.
I wish the balloons could happen now.
I know now will be when the balloons should happen.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah. That was a great one.
Thank you guys. Yeah, that was really fun.
It's been so good to talk to you about your work, and kind of like what radio still does, the power of radio and power of music. This is what this podcast is all about.
Mm-hmm. And you close with a track.
We sure do.
Yeah. Tyler, what have we chosen as our standout track from this album?
Sweet Thing, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we'll go with that one.
We got to go with Sweet Thing. I think, and for me, it was a reason. I used the word sweeping when Michael and I were texting about it last night, because there is it sweeps across. It sweeps across your ear, and it sweeps across your mind and your heart. And I think, in exactly the way that you said that maybe Astral Weeks is like Into the Mystic, just unraveled. I feel like Sweet Thing is also an unraveled version of one of his other pop songs, one of the more compact ones, in a really satisfying way. It's classic Van.
Sweet Thing is so good. Yes.
Do you have any other thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think we I mentioned I sort of felt obligated to maybe choose Madame George or Cypress Avenue, because a lot of people say those are sort of like the anchors of the album. But I think that there's sort of a similar effect that Astral Weeks has that those other two songs do, in the kind of like wandering quality of them. And Sweet Thing stood out to me as being like a little bit different in terms of the quality, the direction of it. Mm-hmm. And that'll be a nice companion to the title track.
Yes.
Totally.
Sarah, thanks so much. This is I hope we get to meet in person sometime, since we're both in Canton.
Yeah, we certainly should. And thank you for inviting me. This was a real treat, a really fun way to spend a morning.
It was for us too. Thank you so much.
All right, listeners, let's listen to Sweet Thing, and hope y'all have a great week.